Good afternoon. We are live. David Kirsten here with my esteemed co-host Cory Knott with Quantum Leap. And this first segment of Quantum Leap, we're actually going to talk about a kind of a favorite topic of ours. Although we both admit that we're probably maybe not the best salesperson on the planet, needless to say. But I do feel we do have some insights, and Cory especially is really um, has a lot of great things to say about sales, which we're going to get into. But first, I want to do a quick check in with my esteemed co host, Cory, and ask how you are and if you have any quick things that you've been kind of focused on this week. I know you have a class coming up at 5 p.m. tonight. If you don't mind just telling us briefly
Sure.
what you're going to be doing in that class.
So Cory and I here, and business coach with Take Wing Coaching, and I've been working for the last several years on becoming an expert with neurolinguistic programming. And in the last year and a half, I've been working on a system that's part of NLP called Mind Sonar, and we use meta profiles, programming, and so on. I mean, to put it simply, we can actually measure how somebody thinks and what they believe within, say, their work or relationships or referrals. It doesn't really matter. And then determine where they have strengths and where they have weaknesses. So my class today is going to be focusing on some of the strengths that I see for small business people that also tend to be their limitations, and how we can develop some muscles around overcoming those limitations. And specifically, I'm going to be talking today about procrastination, inconsistent cash flow, indecision, and wearing too many hats. But there are several others that we'll cover, and just give some exercises on how to develop some new habits. It's a really fascinating tool. There's so many different classes on mindset. I think what I have is unique. It's not well known in this area, and it will actually enhance any other mindset work that you might be doing.
Yeah, I do think that's something that's very rare and unique about you is how you actually bring this such an awareness to people about their strengths or maybe weaknesses, some of the different tools that you have. And, that process is just hugely invaluable to kind of take a look at where we're strong, maybe where we need to gain strength. And I don't see, I see some business coaches call that out in places, the ones I've talked to, but I really think you have just a big toolbox to do that. And I do look at. We will put the link to your class tonight in the box, and I've really been. I feel like I'm. You call me a go-getter when it comes to sales. I'm kind of a closet go-getter, or a little bit more low-key go-getter, and we'll talk about what some of those terms mean. I think I do see myself as a good salesperson, but I actually get worried that I'm going to have so much work to do. So much of it's about finding the right client. And I do have a couple good products that I'm bringing to market soon with industry leader and some kind of trainings and things that we're going to talk more about. But, I'm really just excited for this segment, and also Mike Macedonio coming up in our second segment, who is going to bring a ton of value and just as a hugely influential businessman. So I'm just going to leave it there and just want to jump right into our sales segment. And what is a sales conversation, and what should that look like, Cory?
Well, I don't necessarily have any shoulds as to what it looks like. My typical sales conversation, it might go a couple of different directions, but really, ultimately, it's a fact-finding mission, right? So it's about listening to what somebody wants, what it is, if they're coming to you for something, or if they've expressed interest, then there is some sort of goal that they have. And so understanding what that is part of the sales conversation. And and so it's best to listen, to take a lot of notes, listen for the words that they're putting into that conversation, because that is going to be an indication of what drives them, what motivates them. And to build rapport with them, you want to feed them back what they're talking about. There's another sales coach. Actually, I'd say he's more of a marketing coach, but I love how he talks about sales, which is, because I think it's marketing too, is, as part of the conversation, what you're looking for is finding out what it is they want. And as experts in what do we do in our business, we usually know what it is they actually need. but start with what they want. And if you know everything that they want, then that's what you can give them as part of the sales process. And of course, once they buy from you, and then you can focus on what they need. So my conversations are usually about taking a lot of notes. Um, and there's different styles, different ways to do that. A lot of people will take that information, say, I'm going to come back at you with a proposal. I like to overcome objections kind of early on. So I will sometimes talk a little bit about budget. I'll say, focus on, like, okay, so you've got this problem. What is it worth for you to solve this problem? What is it costing you not to solve this problem? And to start to overcome some of those objections that would come up after the proposal process. So it can be in the first conversation. It can also be in the second conversation. It depends on how deep we're going in that. Sometimes it's an initial discovery. It's just, okay, these are your goals. Let me come back when I have some, thoughts about this. And sometimes it can just be all up front. I don't say there's a really strong structure. One of the things that I learned to avoid was giving a proposal before they say yes. And so if you come at it from the angle of, okay, I'm going to give you a proposal that's going to answer all of these questions, do you have anything else that I might need to know before I give that to you? Because the idea behind the proposal is it's really just giving them what they want and explaining everything in a formalized manner, so that really what they're doing is they're just giving you a credit card and signing on the dotted line. And that's not a really traditional way to sell, but it is, it saves a lot of time, because if there are things in the way, sometimes it's like, okay, well, let's table that until later. Maybe it's not the right time to work with me, or maybe it's time to work with somebody else first, or maybe it's a different package. So the tendency, it's so that in a lot of, when I did the software development business, it was often, okay, I'm going to come back at you with a proposal, and then I would give it to them and wait for them to say yes or no. And I was actually pretty good at that. Still, people, that's all the objections come up. Once you tell them what it's going to cost and what you're going to do, that's where the objections arise. So I suggest getting ahead of it.
Yeah, what I do see is unique about you, and what I like about working with you is that you don't have kind of a certain system that you say, well, here's how you should sell things. You kind of hear about our strengths, because not everybody has the same style and should do the same way. So it's really about finding out where we're strong or what approaches work the best for us. And I think the most important thing about a sales conversation is that it should seem natural, and everybody's kind of been in one of those pushy sales conversations where these people just, they're on you like a cheap suit, so to speak, and they don't give you much space. And it's just a very uncomfortable thing. And I kind of see where they're going. And a lot of it's just a kind of a clash of personalities, and people don't like to be kind of told what to do. You really want to have it be a natural thing, to where they arrive at how you can help them, so they feel like you're doing them a benefit, instead of you actually pushing something on them and then they push back, and then it's just creates a certain friction there. So I do think that one thing that's very helpful about Lyft and what you do is people can come to you and say, well, here's what I'm doing for my sales, here's what's maybe not working, here's what's working, and then you can really give them an assessment of how to move forward. And that's something that you've done with me, and I've really appreciated it. I did want to say, well, if somebody's watching this, or people in your Lyft platform, how do you get started as a small business owner, improving your sales skills and techniques?
Yeah, it's really good what you bring up, because I think one of the things that, and I, I just learned something this morning, which I think I've been practicing, but I didn't really realize, and I'm going to be much more focused on. Part of getting started is finding your target market. And we have a whole system for your why, your vision, and your target market. But when you understand your target market, then you know who you're selling to. And if it's just anyone, then you start having to learn different techniques for different people. And so I suggest learning some things about behavioral styles. DISC is an excellent tool for that. There's some good tools out there like Bank and so on that do that. They're a little more formalized. But if you know who it is that you're selling to, then you can start to focus on techniques, because some people want a lot of information. Some people want time to make a decision. Some people want a decision up front. They want to trust the expert. And so if you're selling to the kind of people who are, as we were talking about earlier, go-getters, it's better just to tell them what is the best option and wait for them to buy, because they will if they believe you're the expert. And if you overtalk them, they're going to not make a decision. Whereas I also had somebody one time ask me, he says, I'm telling these people that if they make a decision today, I'll give them 20% off, but then they don't make a decision and they leave or they come back later. I said, well, instead of, giving them an immediate decision, this obviously they don't want to make a decision that quickly. So that's not their style. They may trust you as the expert, but they still have to do some research or give it some thought. So the better thing to do would be to say, I'm going to give you 3 days, to make a decision on this, and I'll call you in 3 days. And if you decide then I can give you a discount, for making a decision quickly, right? So that may not be quick to him, but it could be quickly to other people. But then they're not feeling rushed. 3 days is a fair amount of time. Or you can ask them, how much time do you need? And then I'm going to call you then. And so these techniques, we go into when we work with people, we kind of figure out who is your market, and this is how you'd work with them. And it might be a few different types of people. One of the things I learned today, I thought was really fascinating, and I talked about the mindset and mind sonar, is when you really kind of get into the mindset of the people you're working with, you can get a much clearer picture of what turns them off. So for instance, my clients are typically small business owners, they're solo, they wear a lot of hats, they like to be in control. So selling to them is actually not very effective for me. It's much better to invite them, because then they control whether they want to say yes or no to the invitation. When I'm selling to them, they feel like they don't have the control. And so figuring, just changing those little changes in language can really help people make a decision in sales, but we have to understand who we're selling to.
Yeah, and we might revisit this with our next guest too, because I think probably the best advice you can get for sales is join BNI or join Lyft, because you really need to be part of a ongoing community or group of people to share information and learn from. For example, I've learned so much from you about sales. I've also learned from another colleague of mine about sales, to actually be sold to and want to buy, and what did they do, what was going through my head, what was going through their head, what techniques they've used. And I hear that stat about it takes an average of 7 touches to get a sale if you're talking about kind of a higher value product. So that person may not buy from you for 6 months or a year, but to kind of leave that door open. I think the people who I admire is you approach it kind of like a networking or a fact-finding meeting. The first meeting, you're just getting to know that person and establish rapport, and qualifying that lead. Maybe they don't even have an interest in what you're selling, or at that time they just moved, or got married, or doing something that they're not looking to buy at that time. But to really kind of have a longer term strategy to keep in touch, and maybe if they are potentially a good qualified lead, to then do a follow-up conversation, and maybe not even sell it to them at that point. Maybe you wait to the third meeting or something, but to establish a relationship with that person, show that you're interested in them more than just the sale, and truly be interested in them and helping them. And I think that's something that I've learned from you, and that's brought me a lot of success in BNI and some of the things that we do.
Right.
What how would you say the sales environment for small business owners has changed during COVID-19?
That is a really good question. And I struggle to, I was kind of heads down for the first 6 or 7 months, so I didn't do a whole lot, but I think Zoom somewhat makes it easier. We don't have to go to people's offices and follow them around. We can do this face-to-face thing from a distance. I've never been one to really want to pull somebody out of, their busy day and go through a sales pitch. So I think Zoom saves a lot of time and setup. It also becomes important, of course, to maintain your appearance and look professional, which is one of the reasons why I have my professional looking background, and always dress for what it is I'm looking for. So I think but in terms of it's definitely allowed us to reach out further to more people, which can be good or bad, and depending on how you do your prospecting and marketing. I think it's it's really more on the delivery. It's confidence, right? Are you confident that you can deliver on this new platform? And some of us are really, we've been doing it for years already, so it's not that difficult. And I think other people have had to make a pivot, and it is a bit of a struggle, because it's like, okay, so how am I going to, and we know, so, we've known people like that who are, they did everything in person. They would never even think of doing something by Zoom. And then suddenly they had to make that shift, and it takes a while to adjust. But I think most people have either survived and adjusted, or have gone on to do other things.
Great. And what are some things that you've learned about how to be effective at sales that you wish you would have learned a lot earlier, maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Well, like, in the software business, I was actually pretty good at it. I think because of my expertise, people would say yes because they didn't really have a whole lot of other choices, and I'm an easy person to work with. So when you had kind of a niche expert, people kind of seek you out. But when I became a business coach, of course, now there's a lot of noise in the Bay Area. You can't throw a stone without hitting a coach. And literally, like, my neighbor is a coach, and I don't have any. I have one neighbor, and he's a coach too. It's somebody I happen to really like and admire. But so then you have to actually learn some techniques. And fortunately, they taught us some good techniques early on. But a couple of things that I think that I have found really, really valuable, that are just small touches, is one, in my proposals, there's always kind of a feedback as to what I believe about, the relationship, and what it is the customer wants. And it's like, I know that this is what you want, this is what I see in you, and this is how, I'm looking forward to supporting you. And so having a little bit of maybe a touchy-feely sort of message in the proposal is really valuable. It seems to have always gone over very well, as long as it's kind of going back to the original sales conversation and using some of their words. Another one that I always found really valuable, and maybe I wish I'd learned more on, doing the software thing, because I could have spent less time. One was not doing a proposal until I have a yes. That was a big one. That would have saved me a lot of time early on, because it's just, some proposals can take a lot of time to put together. So it's better to have all the objections out of the way and know the budget. And then finally, last one is put your fears on the table. And that's a good practice. If there's something on your mind that is, like, in your own, as a salesperson, you have an objection to the sale, put it on the table. It's like, I'm afraid to ask, I don't like asking for money. So I put that on the table. I just say, one of the things I don't like doing is asking for money, and which means it's probably going to come across to you as not asking you for money. So if you feel like you're being pushed, or you feel like I'm being a pushy salesperson, just let me know, and we'll rephrase the conversation. And usually they're like, oh my God, you're not pushy at all. But that's a lot of times our own fears are what hold us back from good sales. Oh, you're muted there. That's another thing that's, messing up the whole sales process, right?
Oh, I was going to say,
technology.
I'm gonna let Mike in. I think we're going to leave it there for our sales conversation today. And we do have our next guest just joining us, Mike. So just sit tight for a second. We're going to close out the first segment here, and we were just talking about sales, and
I'm going to shut my birds up.
We're going to actually pose this question to Mike, because I see him as having some great thoughts on sales as well, and where sales fit into referral marketing. So with that, we're going to close out this first segment of Quantum Leap, and we're going to get to Mike Macedonia here in just a few minutes. Thanks for listening.